your name?
It's okay. Let's go. It's okay. Let's go. Yes. Okay. You go with this one.
That is the footage the mainstream media won't show you. And because it's propaganda from a terrorist group, however, like, it's important, you know. IDF is also propaganda from a terrorist group. The UN's Antonio Guterres calls for an immediate ceasefire to end the epic suffering in Gaza. UN's Antonio Guterres calls for immediate ceasefire to end the epic suffering in Gaza. Israel has called for the immediate resignation of Guterres. The absurdity! McCarthy served as Speaker of the House for what? It was in February when he was elected. Shy of 8 months. 7.5, 7 and some change, something like that. UN's Antonio Guterres calls for immediate ceasefire to end the epic suffering in Gaza. Israel demands the immediate resignation. I shouldn't laugh. The IDF has been trying to dunk on the UN on Twitter. It's absurd. The Israeli envoy slammed the remarks from Guterres at the Security Council as justification for terror. The FM canceled a meeting with him and called him a terror apologist. It sounds like the terror apologist is actually in the Israeli government because the UN chief is calling for an end to the terror that you are inflicting on the Palestinian people. The Secretary General's comments spark fierce row and Israeli calls for resignation as 700 deaths are reported in a day and hospitals closed for want of electricity. That's a war crime. The United Nations Secretary General has called for an immediate ceasefire to end the epic suffering in the Gaza Strip after Israeli airstrikes reportedly killed more than 700 people in a single day, and hospitals began to shut down for a lack of fuel. Antonio Guterres said the bombardment and blockade of Gaza amounted to the collective punishment of the Palestinian people. A war crime. And it violated international law. And this was comments that sparked a fierce row with Israel. To ease epic suffering, make the delivery of aid easier and safer, and facilitate the release of hostages. The Israeli government is pushing for a ground invasion. Hostages be damned. Families of the hostages have been meeting with the UN, and the Israeli government is pressuring them not to. It is appalling. Gutierrez said the 7th of October attacks by Hamas were appalling. Appalling, appalling. He condemned. But did not happen in a vacuum, and that is correct. The Palestinian people have been subjected to 56 years of suffocating occupation. They've seen their land steadily devoured by settlements and plagued by violence, their economy stifled, their people displaced and their homes demolished. Their hopes for a political solution to their plight have been vanishing. Every single word of that is correct. Israel's envoy to the UN, Gilad Erdan, called on Gutierrez to resign immediately, accusing him of being detached from reality. His comments constitute a justification for terrorism and murder. It's sad that a person with such views is the head of an organization that arose after the Holocaust. My God! To use the Holocaust as propaganda for your genocide of the Palestinian people, that's beyond the pale. Fuck. The Israeli Foreign Minister Eli Cohen canceled a planned meeting with Gutierrez. Airstrikes killed at least 704 people in the past day. The Hamas-run health ministry said brings the Gaza death toll after 18 days of bombing to 5,791. Almost half of that number is children. Almost a 9, because that's how we measure tragedy now in 9/11s. Almost a 9/11 of children killed by the Israeli army. So they did allow 8 trucks carrying food, water, and medicine to Gaza. Asked by reporters in Washington whether aid was getting into Gaza, the U.S. President Joe Biden said, not fast enough.
Come on, man.
3 hospitals no longer functioning. They have run out of fuel. Apparently, fuel supplies are not going to be included in any shipments to the territory. The IDF held a press conference. I was catching up on it as I got off a stream last night, and amazingly enough, the worst atrocities detailed in this press conference, there were no links to videos. There were just descriptions of the supposed videos that were being shown at the press conference. I could not verify that these videos even exist, but apparently were shown during this press conference yesterday. I did watch one of them. It's pretty harrowing. I don't know if I should show it. Israel shows footage of Hamas killings to counter the denial of atrocities. I will point out, there's not even a claim of 40 beheaded babies anymore. Israeli authorities have shown harrowing footage of killings and mutilations during Hamas's rampage in southern Israel on October the 7th. The government showed the 43-minute compilation in a private screening for dozens of foreign journalists at a military base in Tel Aviv on Monday. This was to counter what they said were attempts to deny or downplay the extent of the atrocities. The footage, captured by security cameras, body cameras worn by Hamas attackers, vehicle dashboard cameras, social media accounts, and videos from mobile phones, left some reporters in tears. The material included the killing of children and decapitation of some victims. The audience was not allowed to record the compilation, but one excerpt, not allowed to record the compilation, but only a 1-minute excerpt of this 43 minutes released to the public. This is the video that I watched last night. It's the one attached to The Guardian. You guys want me to play it? Let's have audio here in a second when we get to the body cameras. They're just firing indiscriminately. We're going to cut to body camera footage. So I'll cut away before we see bodies. So the Guardian did blur it out. Another scene, Hamas attackers entered a house and spoke to a girl hiding under a table. After some talking back and forth, they shoot and kill her. This is according to Jotam Confino, one of the correspondents at the screening. Hard to say how old she is, but she looked 7 to 9 years old. Another scene showed a father and his 2 sons, aged approximately 7 and 9, running in their underwear to what appeared to be a bomb shelter. A Hamas attacker threw a grenade, killing the man. The boys emerge bloodied and run. Dad's dead. It wasn't a prank. The other one shouts, "I know, I saw it. Why am I alive?" Other sequences showed a militant with an architectural tool hacking at the head of a man lying on the ground, gunmen killing wounded female Israeli soldiers, and a jubilant Hamas fighter calling his family, "I killed 10 Jews." I probably shouldn't say that. I'll let you guys read that one. I already have enough ammo in the Cancel Justin Discord. Already enough video floating around of me saying some horrendous shit that people could take out of context. Another clip showed an Israeli woman inspecting a partially burned woman's corpse to see if it was a family member. Good evening, Snicks. You may want to come back in like 5 or 10 minutes. We're at the worst part of the show right now. But it gets better. It gets better. We get to some bullshit here. God, you missed. It was all bullshit at the top. It was all funny. We were making fun of Trump and his lawyers and shit. Came in at the worst part. Another clip showed an Israeli... Well, I'm sorry, BB girl. Another clip showed an Israeli woman inspecting a partially burned woman's corpse to see if it was a family member. The victim's dress was pulled up to her waist and her underpants had been removed. They're saying this is evidence of rape. Still images showed a decapitated soldier, charred human remains, including those of a young child or young children, and several Islamic State flags. When we say Hamas is ISIS, is not a branding effort. It was R. Adam Daniel Hagari who said that to reporters after the screening. Grisly scenes from the attack, in which more than 1,400 Israelis died, have been widely shared on social media in the past 2 weeks, but Ilan Levy, an Israeli government spokesperson, said there was a Holocaust denial-like phenomenon about the scale of the atrocities. That's a true statement. I'm just not sure that we're on the same side about who's doing the Holocaust-level denial. The screening took place amid renewed appeals to Israel to halt its bombing of Gaza, which killed at least 400 Palestinians in the past 24 hours. 23,000 children have died since they started bombing Gaza and the West Bank. They have hit the West Bank, bringing the total death toll in the territory to more than 5,000. The dead include 2,055 children. About 1.4 million people, more than half of Gaza's population, has been displaced in the retaliatory bombing, creating a humanitarian calamity for people that are trapped and deprived of water, food, and medicine. Yeah, Richard, if those were the worst scenarios, and I would assume that they were, then that is that is a lot different than the initial stories that we heard about 40 beheaded children. And plus, I watched the way Hamas treated the hostages, and I think we're going to see the video in this piece I'm getting ready to show you. They released 2 more hostages. We got the Americans released the other day. I think I covered that on Sunday night. We've had 2 more hostages that were released around the time we got off stream last night.
Across Gaza, there's widespread destruction as Israel's military has continued to pound targets from the air. It says it's preparing unrelenting attacks to dismantle Hamas. But most of the more than 5,000 Palestinians who've been killed are civilians. The United Nations says 20 lorries of aid entered via the Rafah crossing yesterday with food, water and medicine, but no desperately needed fuel to power hospitals and pump water. It's estimated that 1.4 million people are homeless, including the Abwasi family, who are originally from Blackpool, speaking here at the Rafah crossing.
We had to run from our house in the middle of the night, and many buildings near us have been bombed and that. And one night we had to run to the hospital because we heard the noise in the street and we thought the house across from us was going to get bombed. And now we're just here today waiting for the Rafah crossing to open, inshallah.
The release of 2 more Israeli hostages, the 3rd and 4th in 3 days, gives just a glimmer of hope that international mediators can achieve more. Yolande Nell, BBC News, Jerusalem.
Well, for more on developments in the...
That's what I was thinking. That's a very British accent.
Hugo Bachega, who's in southern Lebanon. And Hugo, we have the French President Emmanuel Macron arriving in Tel Aviv this morning.
Hi there, good evening.
Do send a message to actors who might want to get involved in this conflict. I'm speaking about Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, where you are. What kind of a message does it send to Hezbollah?
Yeah, Catherine, so I think a number of Western officials have warned Hezbollah and also Iran, which backs groups across the region, against any kind of escalation in this conflict. So I'm here in southern Lebanon near the Lebanese-Israeli border, so a lot of attention has been on this part of the region because of these cross-border attacks that have been happening between Hezbollah and Palestinian factions here in Lebanon and the Israeli army. And I think, again, perhaps we're going to hear a message from the French president later today, warning different players, groups, countries in the region against any kind of escalation. And it's interesting that yesterday, again, American officials raised their concerns about the possibility of an escalation of violence across the region. John Kirby, the White House national security spokesman, said that the Biden administration was deeply concerned about the potential for any significant escalation of attacks in recent days. And we've been talking about Hezbollah in the last few days.
And this doesn't even get into the IDF is going heavy on this Iran was involved propaganda. It really seems like Israel wants to draw Iran into this.
But it's very interesting and very important to say that there have been a number of incidents across the Middle East in recent days, in Syria, in Iraq. Bases housing American soldiers have been targeted in drone and rocket attacks, and I think the suspicion here and the accusation actually that was made yesterday by Mr. Kirby is that Iran is encouraging those groups and actively facilitating some of those attacks. So the concern obviously is that there could be an escalation in those attacks being carried out by groups all across the region.
And Hugo, over the weekend, Israel carried out one of its biggest airstrikes on southern Lebanon since this conflict began. Where do things stand at the moment in terms of the cross-border skirmishes we've been seeing where you are?
So the last week saw an intensification of those attacks, and the situation is obviously very tense here. Yesterday we visited some villages along the border. Many residents have left. One of those villages was completely deserted, so that gives you a sense of how concerned people are on this side of the border. And
I mean, DJ W is not a crackpot theory. I mean, I've shown this article numerous times. I've had to keep pulling it up. the Netanyahu government has been funding and propping up Hamas for years. And it was to undercut the Palestinian Authority. Now, did they... This is like 9/11, right? I don't think that the Bush administration actively committed 9/11. Just like I don't think that Jeffrey Epstein needed any encouragement to kill himself, right? Like, he was in Rikers. It's a fucking horrible place. He's facing the rest of his life in prison. Like, he didn't, like, the conditions are there for Jeffrey Epstein to have committed suicide. The conditions were put in place by the U.S. when we funded Al-Qaeda, the Mujahideen in our proxy war with Russia. When we destabilized the region, pumped it full of fucking weapons, radicalized the population, and didn't do our part in helping stabilize them. So, fucking, I don't think Israel legitimately planned out the attack, but they have absolutely set the conditions in motion. Just like the UN chief said, it didn't happen in a vacuum.
And yesterday, I think we had a figure of 19,000 residents who've left. That was a figure that was released by the International...
Well, thank you, DJ Dub.
Migration. So many residents are fleeing some of those border villages. Many people still remember...
I mean, it's not like the brain on Paris Hilton's baby. I'm sorry, that's horrible of me. It's horrible of me. I deserve a titty slap.
A titty slap!
Come on now.
I'm sorry. Right in the middle of right in the middle of all this seriousness. But they aren't focusing on the thing I wanted them to focus on. So it's a good thing I had this story in my back pocket here from Reuters. Freed Israeli hostage says, "I've been through hell." I thought it had video. Well, damn. No, I swear it had video. I watched part of it. What in the hell? I knew there was video. But they're not showing the video of Hamas handing them over. Hamas is taking really good care of them as they hand them over. Now that, once again, I mean, it's propaganda. They knew cameras were on. I'm going to see if I can dig up that video.
My mom is telling the horrific stories. She's saying that many people, a swarm of people, came through the fence. The defense cost 2.5 billion shekels, and it didn't help even a little bit. My mom is saying that she was taken on the back of a motorbike with her body, with her legs on one side and her head on another. There they walked for a few kilometers on the wet ground. There are a huge network of tunnels underneath. It looks like a spider web.
Walking in the spider webs. Leave a message and they'll call you back. So yeah, it's weird that we have not seen this footage in either of the stories that we just watched from Reuters or the BBC. Once again, they know cameras are on them. These are Hamas fighters. She's holding his hand. That's the woman we just heard from. Apparently there's no audio. So giving them food. Once again, they know cameras is are on them. I wish we had audio, but I assumed that we wouldn't be able to understand what they were saying anyway. Oh shit.
It's okay, let's go. It's okay, let's go. You go with this one.
So she's telling him peace and shakes his hand.
Okay. You go with this lady, I'll go with the other.
That's either the Red Cross or the Red Crescent. One thing, when we are watching propaganda from a terrorist group, I will say that. He's waving bye to her. She shook his hand. I mean, I condemn the idea of taking hostages.
He condemn.
That is the footage the mainstream media won't show you. And because it's propaganda from a terrorist group, however, like, it's important, you know. Fucking the IDF is also propaganda from a terrorist group.